The boroughs are New York City. The burbs are everywhere else. Real estate is the ultimate game of risk and reward. It's the biggest investment most people ever make. Fortunes are made over a lifetime and lost in a day. And we're not playing with monopoly money. How do you stay ahead? Who's buying? Who's selling? And why? What do they know? We want the truth. You need an edge. Boroughs and Burbs is your secret weapon, giving you the insider knowledge and strategies you need to succeed in the high-stakes world of real estate. From Palm Beach to Palm Springs, Manhattan to Malibu, we press the experts to expose the pain, find the deals, and occasionally predict the future. That's Boroughs and Burbs, Thursdays, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. Because everyone can make money in real estate.
Welcome, everybody. Boroughs and Burbs, Season 5, Episode 188, Outdoor Spaces. I'm your host, John Engel, and I'm joined by my co-host, Roberto Cabrera. Where are you?
I am on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. How are you?
Center of the known universe, Manhattan. It's coming back, baby. It's coming back. Today, our very special guest, Amy Andrews, from Amy Andrews Interior Design in Greenwich, Connecticut. Hello, Amy.
Hello, John and Roberto.
Very excited to have this. This is one of my favorite subjects of the year. I mean, of course, in early June, everybody is into their outdoor spaces. I mean, what a better time of year to be talking about outdoor spaces and how much joy they bring us. And I have to say, I showed a house yesterday, new listing, $4.5 million, and people came into the house and they said, I really came to see the gardens. I want to see the gardens. Can we just start with the gardens? And so it occurred to me, you know, it's becoming an outsized amenity, outsized importance. And that's why it's important to have this show. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Tell us about yourself. Where are you and where do you work?
I have a studio on Greenwich Avenue. And I live in Old Greenwich, and I have been here for a long time, both working in town and living in town. I grew up here partly in Louisville, Kentucky, but mostly here, a little stint in California. You know, we are a full service design firm. I design, you know, all over the country and a little bit of out of the country, and we love any kind of project that's going to bring us a challenge and something new. You know, we don't have a set
I think
style.
that's overstating it, Amy. I think you're overstating it. I looked at your portfolio and it would seem that you only work in places that begin with an M. Manhattan, Montecito, Montana, Martha's Vineyard. I mean, I may be leaving out a few.
You missed Montauk.
Okay, and Montauk. Montauk. I'm going to hit share right now and show everybody. This is your website, Amy Andrews Interior Design. And when I go to, let's see if I can find it, the portfolio page. Yep, there we are. California Casita, Yellowstone Club. That's really short for Montana.
Mm-hmm.
Modern Greenwich, Central Park West Residence, Classic Connecticut Waterfront, Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, the main house, the guest house, Montecito beachfront. I mean, it is, and Bronxville. Bronxville, where, you know, a quarter acre is a big deal, and you got to make every inch of Bronxville has to count.
Mm-hmm.
Bronxville guest studio. I mean, that's pretty grand. That's grand in Bronxville. Bronxville being right outside.
Yeah, the Bronxville project was a really special project because if you see the traditional part, they first owned the traditional home, and that was their real family home. And what they did is they bought a property that was adjacent to it, that was part of the original property. And so then they rented it out, and when they were ready, they built the guest house. So the guest house and the garage and the guest studio, oh, that's the little studio above the garage. It's so fun. And then they were able to put the pool in the middle, but that is certainly maximized. I worked with Chuck Hilton and Renee Byers on that project, and there wasn't a space left untouched.
You do get around, don't you?
Yeah, I try. I hope,
Just
oh,
curious. I mean,
we're looking
like
for that next place to go.
these clients that are in Martha's Vineyard and in
Yeah.
California and all these different places, are these clients that are here and have houses there, or?
Well, Martha's Vineyard is luckily one of my dearest, oldest friends. So that was like a real passion project, and, got to do a house that really, really reflects her and her family. And we had a great time doing it. And that's a Patrick Ahern project. But we were, he did the shell and we were able to go in and we did all the stone and we redid the kitchen layout and the bathrooms and did stuff like that in that project. And I was just there last weekend, and it's really, I have to tell you, spectacular. But they live in London, so this is they're American, but they've been gone for a long time, and this is their real home base.
Do
Because
you
their
use the same
kids,
photographer for all of these? Just curious. Sorry.
some of them, yes. I
Mhm.
had this was all like the Vineyard, Bronxville, they were the same photographer.
I mean,
I
it's
want
like
to
the
ask about
perfect
this
time of
photo.
day with the light, the way it's coming
Yeah.
in. It's incredible.
We got lucky with the weather in the Vineyard at this photo shoot.
I want to ask about
And-
this photo because I can
uh-huh.
see that this is a rugged environment. I mean, there's salt spray, there's ocean is right there where you can touch it. And I would imagine it's a very ecologically sensitive area where you can't just do whatever you want. You have
So there's some,
ecological
yeah,
considerations here. You
they had
can't just plant any plant.
yeah, they had some serious setbacks, obviously.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're there's a specific footprint that they could be in. So, you'll see that the back of the house faces the water, and then the front of the house becomes a courtyard to where the garage is, which I think you'll see if you go to the pool area. And most of the house was maximized to take the views in.
Hmm.
Like this is the master suite, master bath. So they have this gorgeous terrace again, in your whole indoor outdoor living. You can go sit out there in the morning. Yeah. Children's rooms. Funny enough, this room has the best view of the bathroom of this bedroom has the best view.
I think what's interesting is the outdoor spaces are a focal point of every photograph. My eye is
Yeah.
drawn to the window and what kind of a view I'm
Mhm.
getting, whether it's ocean or lawn or vegetation. I mean, really interesting range of views, but certainly the view is always a focal point of the photograph.
Yeah, and when people buy homes, I find, and I'm sure you probably find this as well. I mean, that goes out to I don't have the picture on my portfolio, but this goes out to a gorgeous green porch. This is used, breakfast, lunch, dinner, happy hour, reading the paper, somebody working with their laptop, that circular, and then this is the front of the house that faces back to the pool, and then the carriage house, which has like a cabana in it in one bay of the garage, and then the guest house is above that. So it's sort of a nice little compound, and then obviously they kept some green, so if they wanted to have a catch or, kids running around on the water side, there was more green, and then here was more for activities and swimming and entertaining. Um, and it's just beautiful. I can't, and I'm not saying it's just beautiful because I was part of the project, but I was there the other night, and they've since added down at the bottom a fire pit. So
Mm.
they're really using this, and they're starting to live there a little bit more year round because they're empty nesters.
Can
So
we contrast this to, there was a place, I think it was in Montecito or something that we saw that looked
mm,
totally different.
yeah.
So now that we've gotten a little bit of taste of what it is you do, I really want to focus on that first question I sent you, which is how is it evolving? how is the role of the outdoor living space evolving, especially since the pandemic? I suspect that in Manhattan, we're going to get one answer from Roberto and on your Manhattan projects, and maybe second homes, maybe I'll get a different answer, but I'll let you
Well,
answer first.
me or Roberta?
Not
No,
me.
you're my
Okay.
special guest.
Oh, I'm the special guest. Oh, thank you. Well, I've always designed. I mean, I like that indoor outdoor living. I grew up with that indoor outdoor living, having a sitting area and a dining area outside. I have, you can see out here, I mean, I have an older home with a big, front porch that I just love, and it's covered in pots and plants and a couple chairs to watch the world go by. But most of my jobs tend to be, unless it's like a small Manhattan apartment, um, tend to have that indoor outdoor flow. I've always found it very important. However, it's obvious there's been a huge trend and a huge trend in marketing with everybody having outdoor furniture lines and accessories. And I think it started out with when we were all stuck at home, you know whether you had a family at home or you wanted family to come and be able to visit you, people created spaces outside. Whether they one of my friends had like a table in the middle, and then you either brought your own beach chair, or she had some Adirondack chairs, and then she would have like individual like bags of chips or so it was all like like cans of soda or you know individual wine, so everything was like and friendly and safe for the pandemic. But I think from there, I think people got used to living outside and having that extension of their home and really enjoying it. And the retail market of it has just taken off. The marketing you see from you know West Elm and Pottery Barn and Front Gate and all of those, they have every year just a whole catalog, you know.
Roberto, can you put a number on it in New York? What is the value? What's the addition of value when we say, oh, this place comes with a balcony, a Juliet balcony, a large balcony, access to outdoor space on the roof? How important, how valuable are outdoor amenities generally, or can you be more specific?
Well, in New York, not all outdoor spaces are made the same, right? Some are on the roof, some are like through a bedroom. Ideally, you have one that's right off of the living room, but not necessarily in your view, because in the wintertime, it's sitting out there with furniture covered and it's actually quite ugly. Um, so, they're not all made the same and they're all valued differently. Some people, they absolutely on their checklist is, I want outdoor space. So that's extremely important. A lot of other people, they're like, I live in New York. I don't care. I don't want outdoor space. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to pay for it. Typically, as far as a value, I mean, a lot of people would say it's worth half the price per square foot that the regular part of the apartment would be. But those are, I mean, there's been a
Well,
lot of studies.
I'll give
Jonathan
you, for
Miller
instance,
has done
if
shows on pricing outdoor space. It's very tricky because they're not all made the same.
so, do you think somebody would be rather have a view of Central Park or be one block in and have a rooftop deck or outdoor space? Is it becoming more important to look at outdoor space, beautiful greenery of the park, or is it important to use it?
Two different buyers,
Hmm.
two different people.
So
I
I'll
remember
know it when I see it.
Yeah, it's preference though. But if you have a view of the park or something like that, you're most likely on Central Park West or Fifth or something like that, and you have, that's a completely different buyer than being in the block and perhaps maybe being in a townhouse that has a roof terrace or something like that. It's just different, very different people.
How about
Yeah,
you, Amy? You work in Manhattan, right? You
yeah,
finding
and
the
I
same?
have, I have the run the gamut. I have two clients that are on Central Park West, and for one, it's the view. That's a pad to, like a pied de terre, but they got a great view, And it's just in the fall in particular, it's just
The
spectacular.
view becomes part of the art of the apartment, right? You
Right.
have
So
windows
like
and
the
it's like,
whole living room is based on the view.
yeah.
I have somebody else that was in further down in Central Park West, and they thought they wanted to be on a higher floor, but then they got the right apartments. They were on a little floor, but they're in the trees, and they look on like, a children's park, and that's a home. So it was convenient for them, and they got a bigger space. But I was saying earlier, I have a young client, young couple, and they're in a full amenity building. They don't have a terrace, but they have the roof terrace, and they have, the grills and the table where they can either meet up with their neighbors or they can have their friends over. And then I have a client that has, a townhouse in Brooklyn where they have a roof deck and they have like a small backyard area.
Have
So,
you have you ever worked on a buildings like roof terrace? Because most buildings, it's
mhm.
like a share. There's a committee of
There's a
shareholders,
shared, right.
and they're like, "Oh, we're on the garden committee," and it's like, "Wow, I wish you weren't on the garden committee because it's horrible." But like, have you ever been approached by a building and said, "Look, can you come and we're willing to invest to
Uh-huh.
really make this nice?"
Not yet, but I would. I would
Yeah.
love to do that.
My daughter has a new apartment, is renting down in Hell's Kitchen, and that was one of the major features that they considered was access to the roof deck, where you could grill. And for I think it was Mother's Day, they reserved the roof deck, and we grilled hamburgers on the roof deck, and that was a major big deal to be able to throw a party for 10, 12 people on the roof, and lounge about and
In the
reserve that
center of the
private space.
universe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's funny. We stand there and we look around at all the other buildings and we say, ours is better than that one. Oh, look, they have a pool. Oh, they've got a swimming pool. And so there's a little bit of envy going on. They've got
Yeah.
better roof space than we do.
Yeah.
How do you approach the city? Because it's really they're not all made the same. And I mean, I guess it's an impossible question to ask or and to answer but how do you approach like an outdoor space? Say it's actually a beautiful terrace. It's not a balcony. It's not facing a wall. It literally is a space that's perhaps 15 by 20 or something, and you can really utilize it. Like, how do you approach that?
Well, I had one, a while back. Obviously it was in the river house, so it was gorgeous. But we definitely, we put dining out there so that they could have an extension, to enjoy nice weather. Some seating, we definitely put up some greens and had it, feel they, that it was this real outdoor oasis for them, whether they're just out there to have coffee or they're gonna have a dinner party or they're just, out there, you know,
So planting,
relaxing.
for example, plantings like to sense shrubbery or greenery is
Mhm.
important.
Yeah, it's very, for me, it's very important. I think it's a huge factor because I think it takes, you can just put out gorgeous furniture and some colorful pillows and call it a day, but you put up a couple plants, or even if you have something that's like an evergreen that's going to last all year round, and it just adds another element, it adds another layer of, personalizing it and, you know, creating a true outdoor space because especially in the city, I
Yeah.
think you kind of feel, I mean, people utilize the parks in the city, and I think people utilize the parks more and more even in the suburbs in Connecticut, I notice. But I think it's really nice to have that. And as you were saying, you look out from your apartment and it's nice to see that, and it's also can become a little bit of a barricade between you and your neighbors or
Yeah.
you and the person whose
Sure.
window looks on your terrace.
Sure.
I learned that long ago personally.
So
Somebody was like,
there's a
"Oh," a neighbor was like, "We saw you and your friends out there. It looks like you're having a good time late at night." I was like, "Oh."
Start thinking, what night was that?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Luckily, that was a long time ago.
So how's it changing? I'm going to give you an example. 10
Mhm.
years ago, a pool added zero value to the homes in New Canaan, Greenwich. I know that's an overgeneralization, but pools generally did not add, I couldn't add more to the price of a house I was asking because it had a pool. Maybe it was the wrong pool, the wrong location, they didn't value for whatever reason. That changed with COVID, and pools suddenly added tremendous value and became very high on a lot of people's list. What else has changed? Do you agree with that? And what else has changed since COVID, such as the building of pools?
Well, I just like I spoke with somebody and he said we're going back to more traditional pools, square pools, pools that have um spas attached to them. You know, it's getting warmer with climate change here, so people are keeping their pools open to
I
the
don't get the spa craze personally. I'm just going to put it out
yeah.
there. I get the rectangle pool part because you can put in a track and you can put in
Well,
a
yes,
cover.
because well, that's the biggest trend is the you know, not the free form pools and not the, you know, exotic pools that have, you know, bathing areas and beautiful steps or rocks, but the rectangular pools he told me are the most popular with the safety cover. He said that's all he's doing. He will do spas attached to them. He said he's doing less. It's funny because he said he's doing less spas that are, you know, part of the house or part of the wellness, but I see that more. So it's just, you know, I think it's personal preference.
I
Um,
think lighting design on those outdoor spaces is also way up
a
because now we have
100%.
LED and electronics that can
Well, a
basically
hundred
set the
percent,
mood.
100%. And I think too, what y- if you have good exterior lighting, whether it's in your plantings or lighting your home or lighting your pool, or even adding, you know, outdoor lights or the ones that touch and glow, or, you know, just even if people that add tiki torches and lanterns and candles, it sets an ambiance and it really makes it, you know, so you have a daytime in your pool, but then you have this glorious place to look out on that's soothing and comfortable. And I think people, you know, for a while, people were like, well, you know, we may have another pandemic and, you know, we might have to be home again. So
Is
people have set up their homes to be there and to maybe they went ahead and built that pool because they always wanted it. But now it's like, okay, well, we
Can
might
I ask
not have.
about the correlation? Like John, you said it wouldn't add that much value.
Yeah, I was
Price.
shocked when you said that.
But is it because I mean this is what I heard. I you know we bought a house out east that has a pool, but so I didn't think about it. But a friend of mine post COVID wanted to put in a pool, and he said that first of all there was a waiting list. They couldn't get it done, but also my understanding is putting in a pool used to be like $30,000, and now it's like $150,000
Yeah,
to
I
put
was
in
gonna
a pool.
say it used to be 60, now it's like,
Yeah,
well, also, but
so
people are not just putting in their pool. Like, you know, there's especially out east, and I would say sometimes around Connecticut, it was just a pretty pool with a little coping, you know, maybe there was a spot for
and they
chaise.
would even and it would be lined by grass.
Yeah. I don't love that because the grass gets in the pool, but
Exactly, I
that's
agree.
me. But
I agree.
now, you know, the pools are
Amy, you need a new landscaper, right? We can keep the grass out of the pool.
well, you know, when you've got kids that run out and then jump in and then run back, you know,
But so,
eventually,
John, but isn't that part of the case? So now you can say, look, this house has a pool. You don't have to go through that expense, you know, so that is a luxury piece.
Okay, we bought a house 20 years ago and it came with a 1950s Wagner pool. And we scratched our heads and we said, are we pool people? I don't know. We've got these little babies, you know, and we've never had a pool. And it's going to cost us, at the time, it's going to cost us $15,000 to put in that cover. We're going to have it resurfaced. We're going to have to buy a new heater for $3,000 every 3 years, and we're going to have to you know, work on the plumbing, the old plumbing. And so it was starting to look at the time to recondition an old pool maybe for a $50,000 commitment. And we really had to say, are we going to use this pool, you know, when we're at that babies stage of our lives? We're not going to be throwing, you know, will we be throwing pool parties? It was kind of a commitment. We did it, at a time where I don't know that we would have paid an extra $50,000 for that old pool. We were seriously thinking at the time of filling it in. And many of my peers, people my age, filled in their pools. So absolutely was not and it's going to add, a commitment. You have to pay somebody to clean it and add chemicals, each week. So it's, you had to make a commitment to doing that. And some of us were on the fence. Since COVID, now I see a lot of $150,000, $250,000 pools going in because the covers got better, the lighting got better, sound systems, and of course the revaluing of outdoor space since COVID.
See, this reminds me a little bit of townhouses in the city. So townhouse, they never had elevators, and now when you have a townhouse buyer, it's like townhouse. That one doesn't have an elevator. It's that thing that they all are kind of start having. If you're looking for that top dollar, you got to have an elevator. So now if you don't have the pool, it's like, well, they all have pools. Yours doesn't.
Now I'm going to add another one. All right. We're going to move off pools. You mentioned how much you value that porch over your left shoulder. I'm going to say that porches are back in fashion. For a long time, I'm on planning and zoning board, and in New Canaan, for a while, everybody was maxing out their coverage in Greenwich and in New Canaan and places and making their houses bigger and not adding porches. We changed our zoning regulations to exempt porches from coverage because we wanted to encourage more porch building, porch living. We said, don't not build a porch because it counts against your coverage. I don't know if the same thing is true in Greenwich where they measure FAR instead of coverage, but at any rate, we encouraged it, and we were starting to see a lot more porch building in the last 10 years for houses that are being designed and going up now. And since COVID, we're seeing a lot more people using their porches and having porch parties. And so talk about how you use your porch. Do you go out there and have coffee every morning on your porch?
Well, usually I'm like flying out the door, so I don't. But I do like to enjoy, I do like to sit outside, and I do, you know, just sort of our
How about
visit.
screens on the windows? They coming back? I mean, for a long time, everybody just talked about having, double glazed windows, but now
It's
I'm
so
starting to
funny
see.
because I personally just had to redo all my HVAC. And um I always was somebody who, I mean, I open and close my windows. I have French doors with screens. I think people don't like to look through the screens. So I see a
Right.
lot of homes, and I've designed multiple homes that, we put in the pull down screens and this and that. But I think as times have changed, I think people open their windows less and less because they just literally go from heat to AC. And you know, in New York and Connecticut here, we were going from heat to AC to heat to AC.
But now we're talking about air quality, and it's being measured, and it's coming out on my iWatch and my iPhone are all telling me about
Yes.
air quality all the time. So there's a newfound interest in getting fresh air into the home, and the HVAC systems are adding these fresh air exchangers.
Right.
Whereas in the old days, guys like, Roberto would just open up the window and have there'd be a screen, and he'd yell
Yeah.
down to the kids playing stickball in the street, "Hey, come on up! It's time for dinner." The old-fashioned way of living in New York, right, Roberto?
That's right.
Right.
That's
Just
right.
yelling through the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I find a little bit of both. I I was just up in the house in Martha's Vineyard, and she had the AC going and the doors open. So, like, but like she'd open them up in the morning when it's cool, and then,
Right.
close them
Do
up.
people request the old screen door that because that love to hear that that
Yeah,
slamming of
well,
the green door. Does anybody
yeah,
request that?
I have them. I had custom ones built.
I have them.
They're
I
I have,
love my
fantastic.
screen
It's
door.
such a sense of, that's just it creates the whole
I take
environment.
the, I have the, I have new ones that were made, but I have the glass that, for the storm door. And then I have the screen doors that just went in, a month or so ago.
Do they
Um,
slam?
no, because they're wood.
I
They
know.
don't
I'm
slam
kidding.
the same. Not of those heavy metal ones.
Yeah, I know.
Um, I think it's just dependent upon how you live and how the family lives. Like I have clients that live on the water and they have, gorgeous windows and gorgeous outdoor areas, but they don't really open their windows. I think if they want to be fresh air, they go outside. They have a screened in porch, like also I think, people are conscious of bugs. You know,
Right.
we here we get the mosquitoes if, or flies or bees or, whatever it may be. Um, but I do know people that, like myself that open the windows and
So that's a question for you. You see a lot of these beautiful architectural designs,
Mhm,
big sliding glass doors along the entire back of the house that can completely open to the exterior. And
mhm.
there are no screens or, I
Yeah,
mean,
like the
like it's
nano doors.
beautiful and the idea of it is great, but the number of flies and stuff that would literally come into your environment when you close all that at night, you'd be like,
Yeah.
wow, that was a
That's
bad
for
idea.
I feel like well, for here, I did a project in Riverside where we did the nano doors that came off like, it was a kitchen, great room, and it opened onto a screened porch that had, was fully set up for like a bar and dining and stuff. So that made sense, right? You're not getting, and they're on the river, so this beautiful setting, but it's buggy, so they had the screens. Um, you know, the nano doors, if you're in California where it's drier, or Arizona where, you get less of that sort of mosquito kind of um environment, then I think the nano doors work, especially if you're opening, if you're like in a Santa Monica or somewhere, where you have a smaller footprint and the nano doors really become part of your lifestyle. This
Tell us about this one. This is on your website. This is the Hilltop, right?
Yes, this is a great house.
Where is this?
This is in the hills in Montecito, so it has an amazing ocean view, but they have the beauty of being up in the hills. And so the beauty of this house, because they had a house on the beach, and in California, you get a lot of the May gray and the June gloom, and in the winter, it's sort of foggy and cold. So up here in the hills, you get a lot of like here, the doors are open to the garden. It's, you get more sun all year round. It's drier. You don't get that. You get some coastal fog, but not like you do when you're down on the beach. But everything in this house opens up to the
I love that
outdoors, and
picture on the left.
you can take the outdoors back into the indoors, and that's a whole, tradition. There's that sort of California ranch U style home where, you know, the the outdoor living was part of the indoor living, and you went from outside to inside, you went outside to get to the other side of your house. So this house is very much utilized. It's a different footprint, but it's very much utilized like that.
It looks like low maintenance. It looks like everything's a perennial, native grasses, native trees. It doesn't
Yeah.
look like a lot of maintenance, and it doesn't look like I've got to go water it or trim or mow every week. Is that deceiving or is that accurate?
Um, I think it's somewhat accurate. I think that this house this house is actually getting ready to be totally different. It's in the mass. It's been taken down to the studs,
Mm.
Oof.
and the pool is no longer going to be where the pool is. And
Mm.
Will the
but
facade look the same?
yeah, it's the same footprint, but the facade will be a little bit less adobe and sort of squared off corners and rounded corners, and instead of awnings, pergolas and things like that. But yes, whoever had done the original plantings, most is indigenous to the area.
Hmm.
And
And
so
is the low maintenance aspect of that intentional?
yes, I think so. And I think what they're doing and what they have done is um taken out things that, weren't quite right and put in more that are, that there's not a lot of water, and you get restricted on how much water you can use in California. So they have more olive trees and, you know, more cacti and different, flowers and things that bloom continually. But
I've raised the
in
question of
a minute,
maintenance.
you can get cut off for your water.
I think that there's two things going on, the trend, and tell me if I'm wrong, but when I have buyers come out and they see one of these impressive estates, they ask how often, and more often than they used to, what does it cost to maintain this property at this level? And I'll tell you, in this town, where somebody might be paying $2,000 a month as a tax bill, and they might be paying maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month to maintain their pool. I know some people who are paying $10,000 a month to maintain the property between spring cleanup, fall cleanup, of leaves, right? In
How many
Greenwich.
acres are you talking about?
So I'm
I
talking
think
about a
you could have,
typical,
yeah.
oh, you go ahead.
Well, I just,
10,000 a month sounds steep.
I
um,
know 2 acre properties and in the 2 acre zone and 4 acre properties in New Canaan and Greenwich that absolutely can spend $10,000 a month, and they've got containers throughout all around the pool area, and they've got to get basically remade each year, and extensive gardens, extensive lawns. Absolutely, you can get to $10,000 quite
yeah,
easily.
well, it's probably higher in the summer, but you want some evergreen, you want that balance in Connecticut. You want that balance of stuff that's going to be around all year round, where it's some evergreens and different things, but then you have your annuals and your perennials, and like my peony, they just bloomed and they're gone, and now they all need to be cut back. Well, I'm fine to do it myself, but I'm not going to be able to do that this week, so I'm going to have to pay. My rose bushes, I was away, so my rose bushes all bloomed, and now they need to be pruned again so that they keep blooming. And you know there's mulch, and then we have the rain, so now we got to fill in mulch in spots. So yeah, I can imagine that people spend that much money, and it depends on who you're hiring. And some people really enjoy doing it themselves, and that's a way. But yes, I think that's something to consider. Like you were saying, your clients wanted to see the gardens. Like, unless you're a real hands-on gardener, it's something to consider as far as maintenance. But it also enhances the beauty of your home, and it enhances that whole transition of inside outside. Like you look out and it's just, it's you have, even if you're not living on the water and the mountains, you have something beautiful to look at. And then, when you're outside, you're surrounded by beauty.
I'm not saying everybody spends 10,000, but I wanted to
Oh,
just talk about the relative, at a house where you might be paying 2,000 in taxes a month when you start seeing a $10,000 bill on the landscaping because you've got a arborist, you've got a tree expert, you've got somebody mowing, you've got somebody else blowing, you got to mulch those leaves or carry them away. Once you hit a
yeah, you're
$10,000,
hopefully using somebody environmentally
yeah,
very
and
friendly to
some of
spray
these
your
people
grass,
say,
to put down new grass seed,
yeah,
to etch the lawn, to, you know,
it,
it's a lot.
So these
And
these
some
buyers,
people,
John, these buyers who wanted to see the gardens, did they seem like they were people who were experienced and understanding that I want to see the gardens because they're beautiful and I know it's going to cost me a ton of money, but I'm good with it because that's what I want.
the gardens yesterday that we were talking about was a 40 by 40 raised stone beds, irrigated. In each of the four raised stone beds, every spring begin with 2,000 tulips. And when tulips are done, they take them out and they put in the 40 tomato plants, the cucumbers, the pumpkins, and everything else. And it's entirely transformed into a attractive entertainment worthy vegetable garden, one you'd be proud of, where you can just grab that piece of spearmint and squish it into your mojito and, and enjoy a glass of wine in the garden, entertaining with your friends. Yeah, we're talking about a piece of art, a piece of living art. And I could point around the property at the Rose of Sharon that come out white in August, and the lilacs that come out, and the apple trees and the cherry trees. Absolutely. It's $1 million installation. Quite easy to get. It is a major feature of the property.
You are selling the property or it's your buyer?
I'm selling the property.
So you kind of quiet. Now let's just say that's your buyer and they come in. Do you say, that it's, you got to consider what it's going to take to maintain this?
I do, and I say you could maintain this, at a more modest level, more perennials, or you can add more container plants, and you can have that pool guy every week, but if you have a cover and you keep it covered, maybe you're using less chemicals on that pool. Maybe you're having to clean it less often. So you begin to make choices. There are strategies to answer your question. There are strategies where a buyer is going to ask their realtor, what are my options? Well, you could hire this service, and 20 guys will descend on your property with backpacks for an hour or two and transform your property in the least amount of time on a Friday, ready for the weekend. Or you can have a gardener just chip away at it, a couple hours each week, one guy, and that's a much more modest proposition.
Do
But
you
it
say,
depends on
and
how
if you
you
really need
value.
help, I'll come over and do it.
And some people think that they're going to mow their own lawn, but it's becoming less and less, these days. It's tough. It's tough to. I don't have any clients who mow their own lawn. We'll just put it that way.
I wouldn't do it either.
You must be making some of the same decisions in the Hamptons,
Yeah.
Roberto. It's your
We have a
summer
gardener
house,
and he comes and he takes care of everything, and
right?
it's an expense.
And it's a significant one.
Yeah.
But it's why you go. It's why you leave New York, and go to a summer place or a weekend place. It's for those outdoor spaces, the subject of Amy's expertise. So, how do you design outdoor spaces for year-round usability, Amy?
I'm sorry, I just was
How are we
distracted.
designing spaces for year-round usability? I imagine, summer, that's easy. But imagine a lot of these places, people want to be able to use them year-round. And one of the great examples is the emergence of the fire pit, even the portable fire pit or the permanent stone fire pit, that people are asking for these days. I see a lot of fire pits.
I know, it's so funny. I have somebody who was like, they're like, we want a fire pit, we want a fire pit, we want a fire pit. And they just had sort of done some outdoor stuff. And I was like, maybe for this summer, you should just buy a fire pit, and set it up and make sure you're going to use it. Because I've seen other people like build it and then it's just sort of, it's not used. Outdoors, like Montana, different places, even California, where it gets cool at night, I think you tend to use them more, and that's part of your outdoor living. We've certainly found where we've, added heaters and pergolas. Shh, sorry, I have a little kitty. Let's see if you could hear him. Um, so, we try and there's so many things now to add to your outdoor living space, whether it's a heater, there's so many indoor outdoor blankets. They are the fire pits. They're the fire, the cocktail table that you take the top off and it's a fire pit. So I do see a lot of that more
Roberto,
outdoor.
I'm gonna show you an example of the one that I'm listing right now. So this is what I mean by raised beds. This is a formal French style formal garden, and you see the tulips to the left, and you see all the other plants, dress, and you see the white table out here that you just simply hose down, right? No cushions or anything else, just easily maintained, and go out there anytime. Now, by the way, this has got an electric fence around it to keep the rabbits out and keep the woodchucks out. This is the pool area. They built this in the last 10 years. This is that original 1950s pool, and we added the retractable hidden cover. It's also got a spa to the left. Every one of these trees, that's an apple tree on the left side. This is the view from the pool house pergola. a 1950s pool, but redone. And that's the garden. And you see that there's a great variety of plants in this scene. It's a commitment.
That's a huge commitment. Not the pool, but those gardens.
I mean,
Beautiful.
you want, and you want walkable spaces. You want, essentially, the garden becomes a series of rooms, and this would be, one room, and this is a different room. So each of these rooms has different seasons where they blossom. This is what I called that Rose of Sharon, and this comes out in August, but you've got, early season color right here. In these photos taken, the irises, which, came out in May.
Well, it looks like they're ready for their, annual plantings too.
Right, exactly. Are you tempted, Roberto? If you saw something like that, you'd say, I want to go see that. But then at a certain point, you might say, what's it going to cost to maintain such a house?
Yeah, I'm going to waste your time and say, I want to see the house, I want to see the garden, but that's not for me.
But maybe it's for somebody who always dreamt of
Of
having.
course. No, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. And I love the way
But
you
that is
described
a
these are
huge- that's
different
a-
rooms.
Yeah, that house is a huge commitment.
A lot, for sure.
I have
I'm a
another
simple-
one I'm selling with the fire pit. So I'm going to just show it and show this is a 1957 mid-century modern, and they added this stone fire pit right next to this old, this is a 1957 house, and it's got an older freeform pool, so it doesn't have the option of a retractable cover. But you can see it's very a lot of Japanese gardens around this, rock gardens, Japanese gardens, a lot of use of natural materials, the stone around this house. This is in the front yard, the water feature, and then this is the backyard pool and backyard fire pit. But these are the outdoor spaces that are setting this house apart. On the first day, the first three appointments made full price offers on day one on this, and mainly you're muted, Roberto.
How many acres
Mainly
is
because
that?
of the outdoor spaces.
How many acres?
This is 2 acres.
And when did you list it? Just curious.
3 weeks ago.
That's great.
First
Prime
3
time.
people made full price
coming?
offer.
So the offer, the people that are making the offers, can I ask you, are they going to be full-time residents, or do they have little kids, or is it a summer home? Like the empty nesters, the downscaling, upscaling?
I wrote a case study in last week's article in the paper. The first was a young couple, and they said, we have been looking for a house like this and space like this for quite some time, but younger professional couple. The second came in was I would say a businessman who lived nearby, and he said, I need a place single level living for my parents. And this would be perfect because it's single level living and they love to garden. And so the gardens really resonated for them. So they were interested. And then I think the third also, a younger couple. So of the first three, two were younger, what I would say millennial couples with younger kids. But the third one was an empty nester.
This is from your post.
Yes.
Yes. And you said couple one, couple two, couple three. Whatever happened? I never saw the rest of it. Who got it?
The empty nester gets it. And I'm going to tell you, as a rule of thumb, never bet against the empty nester, because the empty nester, is at a stage in life where they want what they want, and they're
And they
not going to
typically
lose.
have built up the means to get it. So,
And they're usually, don't want to overgeneralize, but many of them are giving up a large and expensive home and trading into a smaller, less expensive home. So therefore, they're only willing to compromise so far. We'll just put it at that.
Oh, and also they have specific needs, like you're saying, they need a first floor master suite, or, all one level accessibility.
I have empty nesters now who really treasure their outdoor spaces and their privacy on 5 acres in Connecticut. And they say, I'm going to have to downsize in the next few years. Can you find me, Amy, John, can you find me a condo or a small house with some nice outdoor space, um, and even though I don't need it now, I'm willing to buy it now and just sit on it until the day I need it because I know that it's that hard to find and that there's that much competition to go get a great condo with outdoor space or a small house walkable to the downtown with great outdoor space.
Oh,
And
I
how
think
difficult is that to find?
Really difficult. Yeah, there's 10 buyers for every one available. In fact, the guy I just told you, the winner, the empty nester who got that house, said I just competed for another house and I found I was one of 11 offers. And he said, you know, I'm tired of competing with 11 people. What's it going to take? So you've got a bit of that mentality, and not just
Yeah, of
him, but
course.
you've got
Those are
that
the
bit mentality
those
in
are
the
the
market.
best buyers, the people who've lost out on bidding wars multiple times. They're like, okay, I got to end this
yeah, I'm
pain.
done. Yeah.
Right. But you can hire somebody like Amy to take what's a silk ear, a sow's. You
Now's
can,
your silk purse.
yeah, that Amy can make it nice for you, right? You can make it
Yes.
nice. And do you, when they say, what's it going to take to make this nice? Do you say, I think you should allocate 20% toward the outdoor spaces, 50% to the outdoor spaces?
I will tell you, I went on an interview yesterday, and this house has an amazing pool area, but it's an older home, and it's sort of actually ironically a mid-century somewhat home that had been added on to, so it tiers on the property, and it has a fantastic pool and gardens, and then it looks out onto all this property. But it's 2 stories away from the kitchen. So, and they need a new kitchen, but part of the whole kitchen plan was creating a second outdoor terrace because if she wants to grill, it's and they're entertaining and they have family or friends over and everybody's at the pool and there's tons of, different seating areas. There's a pergola for shade and, chaises for the sun and dining. They're grilling and everything's down there and they're all set up. It's great. But if, she wants to grill some fish and it's just the two of them, she's got to like cross the front entry, go downstairs, go outside. So she part of her kitchen renovation is to have a second little terrace where she could have her morning coffee, or now that they're empty nesters, if they want to have another couple over, or just grill and sit outside themselves, have a smaller area that's convenient. So I think it's really important.
I think you're 100% right. I've seen for many years people think nothing of dropping $200,000 on a kitchen transformation. If you told them they had to spend $200,000 on the outdoor space, historically they would have said, "What?" They think that the kitchen is the heart of the home, and where do they spend 90% of their time? It's a kitchen family room experience. Now it's a kitchen family room outdoor experience, and as that outdoor becomes part of the kitchen, people are thinking nothing of putting another $100,000 into the outdoor space to make the kitchen even better.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be like a full outdoor kitchen because I've done those too. And the funniest thing is that some of those that you've done and you see and they're so gorgeous, like people don't use them because they're far away from their kitchen, you know? Um, but it's ironic too that I was just in Florida and I went with clients. I flew down to look at a few different places, and they're more villa condo kind of places, but like right on the beach. So we went to see one that had been renovated, and this couple were nice enough to let us in, and she said she sits out there and she definitely uses it for lunch. She definitely uses it for coffee. She definitely reads her paper out there, but she doesn't use it for dinner because it's too far from the kitchen.
Wow.
And it's so funny. It was like the third time I've just recently heard how it's great to be outside, but it's too far from the kitchen. And they were a little older, so they didn't want to carry everything. When you're setting a full dinner, salad or starter, dinner, cocktails, water glasses, dessert, coffee, it starts to be a lot. But
I'm going to
think-
now thank our sponsors, but while I do, I want you to think of the last word. I want to hear your best advice to all these home buyers out there who are thinking about outdoor spaces after I thank the sponsors. Ready?
Mhm.
All right. So this has been Boroughs and Burbs, and you'll find us at boroughsandburbs.com. And last week we had Los Angeles right now. We talked about the impact of the fires on the Los Angeles market. Make sure you tune into that episode. And the Chinese market. Are the Chinese buying in Manhattan? And what's it going to take to bring them back? So those are two great episodes. You'll find us also on YouTube, and we were surprised that one of our shows just did 121,000 views. Boroughs and Burbs Apartment Complex Investing, 120,000 views for episode 185. That was great. Amy Andrews Interior Design.com. That's where you're going to find Amy Andrews, and you can check out her entire portfolio at that website. Hilltop, California, Yellowstone. I want to thank our sponsor, gracefarms.org. Events this week include, again, Learning with Nature, Art in Nature, and a fabulous concert coming up with Marcus Miller, saxophonist and musical director at Grace Farms. That's coming up this Saturday. Tickets, you can get them on their website for $30 a piece. And you can find us on Facebook, and that's the beginning of the show today. So with that, I'm going to turn to you, Amy, for the last word. What advice can you give all us new homeowners who are moving out to the burbs and planning our first outdoor space?
Well, I think it's really important to think about the scale of your property. Do you have a lot of, is there something existing? Can you add to that? Do you have green space? Like, just going back to who's living in, is it a young family? Do they have pets? Do you need green? Do you need grass? Is it an older person that just wants to entertain and sit and have that extension? I think scale is really important. I think it's important that I address it like I address in interiors. It's got to have a consistent flow. I think the more you know your client, the more you can help them design a space that has that transition and that flow from indoor outdoor. I think the convenience of it, figuring out where it is, you could have this great view, but if you can't access it, you might not use it. So the access to the indoor outdoor, the flow to the indoor outdoor, so it's a real extension of your home. I think that's really important. And I think, like we spoke earlier, there's the footprints of whether it's a condo development or even homes is getting bigger and green space is getting smaller.
And I don't think it has to be expensive. I think my wife, if you asked her, her life would be complete once we uplight the trees in the backyard. That's what she wants most of all. And I think that's not that expensive, honey. We can uplight the tree. We can light up the trees.
Well, you can do it. I mean, you can do it from many ways. I mean, like, I'm guessing you're going to have a landscape architect or, electrician come and wire, so the trees go, but people get, ones that are powered by the sun. They're, they get the sun all day and then they light up at night. I do think the lighting, thinking about, can you go outside and, if you put out, some guacamole and chips, can your friends see it? Like, the lighting is great, adding heat, adding flowers, adding, the whole gamut, pillows to make it comfortable, throw blankets if it's cold. There's all those little touch lamps that add on, candles, lanterns. Go for it, create the whole environment, have fun with it.
Have fun with it. I think that is the best advice of all. Thank you, Roberto. Another great episode.
Thank you, Skipper.
Always love working with you.
Amy, thanks so much.
Well, thank you both for having me. I really enjoy this, and I'm a huge fan. So
Okay, us too. Us too of you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Roberto. See you next week.
You guys.
bye, guys.